Welcome back to Cheap Pop, where my friend Matt and I try to take a film, television show, video game, don't really quote us on that last one, break it down, flip it, and reverse it while giving you our rundown, our analysis and takes, and maybe some interesting stuff you didn't know. Unless you did know it, in which case, I don't know, get off my lawn. Today, we are finally getting back into the Eva series, looking at Neon Genesis Evangelion 3.0, or in the case of the Blu-rays we watched, 3.33. You cannot redo. I feel like they're not redoing finally. We're getting some new stuff, but things are getting weird. Things are changing. We're finally going in new territory, and I feel like they're trying to overcorrect maybe. Matty boy, how you doing today?
I'm good. So I watched this movie like in parts, and
Okay.
then I found myself constantly going back more than like others. Like others, I would go back and like kind of take notes, but this one I would go back and I just would be like, "What the hell just happened? What am I
Yeah.
watching?" And I felt like that was probably every 10 minutes as I would just like skip back, try to figure out where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like I don't know. I enjoyed it because it was new,
Yeah.
and that's something I think it had going for it. But a lot of the directions that I think they took it, I don't believe I would have gone that
Yeah.
way. And I think the animation just got a little. It's like it's a Hollywood level of animation. It's just like bombs and explosions and so and then this and this and this. It's like
Yeah.
I need less. Give me something to focus on. I don't want to be in the middle of an explosion.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's fair. Um with this movie and me, like I feel sometimes when they're making like a series or something like that, you'll see it in Hollywood a lot, where it's like they make one movie so that they can make the one they really want to make. Like,
Mm-hmm.
think like whether it's the disastrous Jurassic World trilogy thing they did, where it's like they made the Jurassic World 2, basically, only because they wanted to make this most recent one, which was also god awful, but that's a whole different conversation.
I think there's another one too coming out.
This is kind of what that felt like to me. It's kind of like they looked at it and they were like, okay, we've covered our bases with 1 and 2. We're basically through the first like 14 to 16 episodes of the show now. Now is where we're going to diverge, and it's going to be all new because we're going to take the ending in a different direction. Okay. By the way, we're going to flash forward 14 years, and there's going to be a whole new angle and degree of the warfare. There's going to be new alliances and enemies, like battle lines and everything drawn. There's entire new concepts like the chorization, all sorts of stuff where it's just thrown at you right out of the jump, and you're as discombobulated as Shinji waking up for the first time in 14 years. Just no idea what's going on, and it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't like the start of this movie. Like, there are interesting ideas, but it's like so much has changed every time I rewatch it, and I've seen it a few times now, so it's not an unfair judgment. I don't think it's not like I saw it once and was just like, eh. It feels like too much whiplash, I guess. Like, I look at it and I'm like, man, it's like you're trying to sprint in the opposite direction from what the first two were to like make it stand out. But then, like, whether it's the back half of this movie, which I actually think is decent, like better, um, or Thrice Upon a Time, you kind of reel it back in a little bit, not in terms of plot points, but at least with some of the insanity of like what that first part was showing you, the new elements of like the Vunder and like the ship warfare and all that. Where you're like, so the ships are like part angel, part seed of life, atom. I don't fucking know. It's also maddening.
Star Fox 64.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Is like rewatching it, I'm always like, I don't love this beginning. But once we get to the second half, I'm like, there's some really cool stuff here. I still don't love it because it's a lot of like, oh man, epic shit went down here while you were unconscious. We're not going to see it, of course, because you were unconscious, but we're going to tell you epic shit went down. And it's just like, I don't like when you tease like that. I want to see it, even if you gave me a character's flashback or somehow let Shinji see it. Ava's done plenty of weird stuff with like visions and dreams and stuff where you could have done something like that for Shinji to experience it.
Well, the thing too is it's like you make this series, then you make this movie recapping your series,
Yep.
and then you make more movies recapping your series. And it's like, I'm sure people are getting pissed off because you're giving us the same stuff and it's a little different. And I will admit that I really liked the first 1.1. The numbering thing is
Yeah.
driving me crazy. But I like that. I like that they had more time with it because they weren't so fleshed out.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't even know where I was going with that originally because I feel like I get so frustrated just with like seeing the same thing over and over again, and they just went in such a different direction. What I was going to say is, um, and then in the last one, we get this thing I've been craving with the series, which is an actual human emotion and connection. And that's
Mm-hmm.
Shinji and Rei. And I'm so excited that they actually did character building between two people that goes somewhere. And then I feel like this one was like, let's crumple all that up and then toss it in our trash can that's got a little basketball hoop in it. And then we're not going to do anything cool with that. You're going to skip you ahead. Everyone is going to hate everyone. It's just, you might as well just have not had it in the first place because it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant right now. And I
Yeah.
haven't seen the last one, so maybe they'll redeem some of that. But right now, I'm feeling more annoyed that they just backtracked.
That's fair. That's very fair. Because yeah, we're on to the new Ray at this point. There's so not to gloss completely over plot points. Again, we're waking up 14 years in the future, uh, and we get a registering of Unit One, which I guess has been missing or something. But it's like in this, it's basically like a giant cross coffin thing orbiting the planet, and they send Asuka and Mari. Yeah, by the way, that's just thrown out there so casually, isn't it? Like you think from the end of last movie, you're like, oh man, like they said, like they're not going to let Asuka die because she's too valuable a specimen, but she just rolls up, and you're like, aside from the eye patch, you look pretty much just fine. Like that's really weird. I felt like that was like giving away what should have been a cool reveal just way too
Mhm.
fucking casually. Um, and so yeah, Asuka and Mari go there. They go to retrieve Unit One. Angels attack. You kind of see a little bit of their dynamic. I think it's I don't like Mari. We've talked about this, and you agreed previously. The quirkiness that they try to give her, I get that they're thinking that'll balance out Asuka well, and so they're trying to build sort of this dynamic with the two of them. But any scene she's in, more often than not, she's annoying me. And sometimes when they want to make like a more direct point, they'll use her like to give that point, like whether it's trying to like get through to Shinji like with something when he's just shutting down or whatever. But it's like when it's a new character that we don't know, it feels less earned. When she doesn't have that history or whatever with him, it feels like, oh, you're just trying to get the new character over by giving them something relevant to do, because without this, they would be completely irrelevant. And there's another one of those moments in this one later on, but the Angels attack Unit 1 as Asuka is calling out Shinji, basically idiot Shinji, to do something. Unit 1 does activate for about 12 seconds before going dormant again. And turns out Shinji has also woken up from his comatose state. And they're doing all these tests and everything, confirming, like, yep, genetically, psychologically, this is Shinji. But he has like a 0.00 sync rate. And they're basically like, all right, well, we can't trust him because he is being blamed for they call it the NTI, near third impact, which is what was happening at the end of 2.0 2.22. um and there's a lot more that we saw even than the end credit scene with Kauru's spear deactivating Unit 1. Apparently it all went on much longer than that, and we just never get to effing see that, which is annoying because they even we find out later kill off a not significant character in the rebuilds, but from the series a notable character in that. And I'm like, I would have loved to see this character do this whole mission to like save the world. I can't even envision this character doing it. Which I guess it doesn't matter if we throw out the name now. It's not like a spoiler thing. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I don't know if I do. I have a great guess of who I think it is. Have they revealed this yet? Did I miss this?
In the opening scene, no, they don't do it in the opening scene, but you find out while Shinji's on the deck of the Wunder or whatever with Misato and them. So I'll give it a second and come into it in a second. But yeah, so they're wheeling Shinji in, doing all this testing, confirming he is that Shinji. He gets to the deck of the Wunder, this ship, and he sees a very colonel-looking Misato, and Risuko is there as well, but it's a lot of otherwise unfamiliar faces. But Shinji's stunned to hear about like Asuka and all of this. Just hearing like, oh wow, she must be okay. Oh wow, that's Unit 2. And you get another angel attack because of course there's always another angel attack. And in Misato's typical form, she's like, you know what? This ship has never been tested to fly. We were trying to confirm it. This is the moment to try it. Never tested it, never done anything. We're gonna figure out how to make this work. And so they're gonna use units 2 and 5 to basically like serve as like the ignition for that. And it's this whole sequence where it's like, oh yeah, their boat can actually fly. Okay, interesting. I don't even really care to go into the fight itself. It's different from Eva stuff, but it's not interesting and it doesn't play into a bigger story, really, I don't think. But they get through that, and the main thing is Misato is like, no, we're not going to let Shinji pilot an Eva. And even aside from if he had a sync rate, basically, we hate you. We blame you for everything that happened. And it's like, Misato, kind of a fucking hypocrite, because at the end of 2.0, I'm pretty sure you screamed the cheesiest dialogue I've ever heard. Do it, Shinji. Make your wish come true. And then you're over here, like, looking at him
I
like,
forgot
that
about
son of a
that.
bitch made his wish come true. I can't believe it. Just, I don't know. That the whole opening part is weird to me because it's just kind of like everyone's mad at Shinji. Everybody blames him. But at the same time, no one really wants to explain a lot of what's going on. Do you want to pick it up from there when Asuka actually confronts Shinji a little bit?
Yeah, and so let's go into like everyone hating Shinji for just
Yeah.
another minute. It's like you can't, there's no like logical reason. I get that they're like, oh yeah, we've seen a lot of shit and this is all his fault, blah, 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 blah. That dude was emotionally unstable since
Mm-hmm.
day one. He made it very clear that he did not feel comfortable. Psychological evaluations should have been happening. Like, there was no sign in the world that was like, this dude's real stable and everything's gonna go great. It was a recipe from like the start. This is
Mm-hmm.
going to be a disaster. And in addition to that, I don't think he had any clue what he was doing or how that led to like what it did. And I mean, maybe people were, I'm trying to remember exactly like what dialogue was happening when he was, trying to get Ray. But I'm sure people were probably like, no, please don't do it. And he's just, he gets determined and stupid and then stops kind of paying attention. But
Right.
it's not like he's trying to kill the world, which he's kind of done, but
He
not
definitely
right
says
then.
something to the extent of, I don't care. I don't
Oh
care
yeah,
if
he does.
the
He
if
really
the world.
does,
He
doesn't
literally makes the
he?
wish.
Yeah,
He just
you're
doesn't
right.
realize he's
You're
doing it. He's
right.
like, I don't care if the world ends. Basically, I'm bringing her back or whatever. And it's just like, yeah. If I'm guessing, like if they had some kind of comms thing still on hearing him say that, then I'd probably be a little sour too. But yeah, he's being blamed for
I
everything.
forgot about
Yes,
that. You're right.
psychologically, yes, he should not have been in that situation. But also, that was the whole point, was to put him in that situation. Gendo's plan. So, um, yeah,
Yeah.
very
So then
questionable.
let's see, where do we go here? So they talk about the Nemesis series Angels,
Mm-hmm.
priority being to guard Unit 1. Yeah, Asuka's obviously pissed. She comes up, hits the glass, and breaks it, which you've got to imagine that's probably some pretty strong glass, but she's quite pissed.
Yep.
Um, Surprisingly, all the key players are still alive because,
Sure.
why not? Everyone in an Eva, I'm okay with the fact that Misato and Rasuko, and I'm like, yeah, maybe not. Like, don't think you would have made it, but okay,
Yeah.
sure. And then he gets fitted. Oh yeah, he gets fitted with this DSS choker, which
Yep.
essentially is like a
Bomb on his neck.
yeah, you piss this off, we're pulling the switch, you're dead.
Yeah.
And so nobody likes Shinji. Nobody likes Shinji ever, but now people really don't like Shinji.
Yeah.
So Shinji's told by Misato not to do anything.
Well, one thing on the Asuka dialogue I wanted to circle back on, because you notice, other than the eye patch, and Shinji says it too, other than the eye patch, you look exactly the same.
Yeah.
And so we introduced this new concept, the curse of the Eva. Apparently, if you frequently pilot an Eva, you just stop aging. Why? I don't know. Probably because they wanted to keep the creepy 14-year-old-ish Asuka vibe for their fan base. I don't know. The weird fan service thing. It's the uncomfortable stuff where it's just like, it would have been okay if she was like 28 or 30.
You wouldn't have noticed the difference either. Like,
yeah.
It would have been just fine, but they just had to do it. They're like, no, guys. She's still 14.
Yeah.
She's still 14.
They're like, no, what? It's actually better. She's actually 28, but she looks. It's like, no. It's just like, that's the kind of vibe I get from that. Every time that comes up, I'm just like, there's too many weird people that already like make uncomfortable art of these characters. We don't need to like give them that, or that they can hang their hat on or whatever.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you that conversation didn't take place, but it did.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, DS choker, pick up. Sorry, where you were with that.
And I believe what they say is that it's essentially triggered by overwhelming emotions while piloting an Eva, that this will, go off and kill Shinji, which we do see later that he is piloting an Eva. Well, whoever's wearing the choker is piloting an Eva, so it doesn't really stop you from that, but it does detect when you're doing things that it doesn't like, which I feel like we kind of skipped over the explanation on that a little bit, but
yeah.
It's just one of those things. It's going to work when it needs to work and not work when it doesn't.
They kind of just set it up with the remote is the main thing, like that Misato has this remote detonator and can use it anytime. In fact, when Shinji's locked in his cell and all of this is going on, like they're getting through this fight with these different series angels you mentioned, and they're able to win. Shinji just randomly hears Rei's voice, and everyone up until now, when he's been asking about Ayanami, Rei, they keep saying like, I don't know, or she's not here, whatever. And then he just is like hearing Rei's voice, which I'm like, that's never explained. Why did he hear her? Like, he wasn't in a suit. He didn't have like an earplug or whatever. He just literally hears Rei's voice, and it's not even the same Rei, because as soon as he basically finally calls out to Rei, like, I'm here, come get me. Unit, what is it? Mark 9, which is now Rei's one. Unit 0 is gone, the rest of the rebuilds. The Mark 9 punches a hole in the side of the Wunder, whatever. And you have this tense moment where Shinji's basically like going to flee. He's like, all right, well, they hate me here. They're not taking care of me. I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that Misato is suddenly like, yeah, we're actually at war with Nerve, and our mission is to destroy every last Eva. And it's like, oh, I feel like this would have been a good conversation earlier. What was that Adam Sandler thing again? Information that would have been useful yesterday. That's kind of how I felt with this. So like, boy, that's a real tense situation to finally fill someone in on something pretty integral there.
Yeah, and we get introduced to, I can't remember her name, but a younger character that is now an older character that we did not really have much experience with.
It's Toji's younger sister, the one who was injured in the series, and why Toji punched Shinji. She's grown up. She's like mid-20s and a nurse now.
Is she mid-20s?
I think so. It's been 14 years and she was 10, so I imagine she's probably
Hmm.
like 24.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Um, so yeah, we get this, and I feel like that reveal was just so out of nowhere. I don't know how I would have done it differently exactly. I just, I don't know. I don't know if I liked how they did it. I don't know how I would have done it otherwise, but it's just like, nope, 14 years have passed. It's like I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted more in between there. Not just like what happened, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going with that.
Yeah, it's like I said with you before. It's like skipping 14 years for a series that's had, or a franchise that had a series, a recap movie, an ender movie, and then launched 4 additional movies. Not to mention video games, not to mention manga. If you want to like really look at the expansive thing, there was so much opportunity to explore this 14 years, and we just skip over it. And now we're trying to like force all of this stuff there, and it feels too rushed. I don't feel like it works, and it's why the first half of this movie, I'm like, there's interesting ideas, but they just don't have room to breathe. I feel like it's
Well, you
why
know what?
it's
Eventually, he'll come up with another movie, and it will be that missing 14 years, and it will be like end of Evangelion,
he
but
did say
less
that
interesting.
he is done with the story of the Evas and Shinji and them after Thrice. He's like, I might be in the same universe where it's like that stuff has happened, like between impacts, basically, but not covering the Avas and not covering Shinji and them. So
It's what everybody says till you flash a little cash.
until the dollars start showing up. Yep. Um. So yeah, Shinji runs off with Rei because he's like, well, I chose Rei over the world, and now the world hates me for it. So I guess I'm gonna go with Rei. Which, to be fair, that makes sense, especially for a character who blinked and realized 14 years passed. Like, yeah, he hasn't had time to really grow as a character or think about this, so that makes sense. He would basically just choose her again. Um, and he gets to the Nerve headquarters. It is smashed to shit. I kind of get the feeling that like the events of this battle were like the insurrection we saw in End of Evangelion. Just
Hmm.
it was Misato and them leading it, which I'm like, again, would have been fascinating to watch. Give me a scene, give me a flashback. Have somebody telling Shinji about it and he's imagining it. That would have been so interesting to me, but we just don't get that. We just see the wreckage and the debris. Um, and the amount of time Shinji gets to like talk with Gendo in this movie is hilariously little. They have never talked so little. Gendo's basically just like, all right, you're here. Well, you're gonna pilot this new Ava when the time comes with this guy. Don't worry about who he is right now, but this guy. And this guy is Kaoru, and I'm like, so Kaoru is willingly a pilot for Nerve? I mean, like, he was the Sele um, guy before in the series. I guess we're kind of saying the same thing here, but this is one of those things where when you try and like make sense of characters' motives, it gets more confusing. I feel like because it's like, so what is Gendo or what does Kaoru know when he knows it? We know later on what he doesn't know, but it's like, what does he know when he knows it? What is his angle? What is the mindset? Like we just gloss over that. It's almost like they know, like, if you're watching this, you probably saw the series, and I don't know, we kind of sort of not really explained it there. So you're just gonna assume it's gonna be something similar along that beat. And we just gloss through it. Meanwhile, Shinji's interacting with Rei, realizing like, oh, you're not the same Rei. The one there are beats that I really like in this movie. Um, and we're just kind of scatter shooting now because again we don't need to go beat for beat over this. What were your thoughts on the scene with Futsuki telling Shinji basically everything?
I, I
They're
just
they're
don't
playing
even
that
know
like
how we're
Chinese
having a
marbles basically.
conversation about anything right now because you just talked about Gendo and you didn't even mention those wicked cool
Visor.
ski shades.
Yep. Oh yeah, they're there the rest of the time for him too. Yeah.
The conversation with Fitsuki, um, I don't know what I felt about it. I liked it because it was like, oh, cool, we're laying everything out. But again, it's like, heard it, been there,
Yeah.
not a reveal. Please stop making it seem like this is new information.
Sure.
And I guess you've got to do that if you're retelling the story. Like, my thought is he wants someone to watch this for the first time without watch.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's just there's things I liked about it. There's things I didn't. When they talked about like, oh yes, your mother's still a part of Unit Zero or Unit One, and then
It won.
Ayanami is also a part of Unit One, and it's like, is she? Didn't he save? What? I don't even care. Whatever.
It's confusing, I know. But no, the explanation is that she is still in Unit 1. Um, but yet he
I
drew
don't believe it.
something
I think
out
she's
and
in
he
his
had,
head.
yeah, and he had the Walkman, so I don't know. Hey, maybe that's how he somehow communicated with her, even though it was Ray 2. And it is Ray 2. There is no Ray 3 in this. The rebuilds, I guess, don't do the canon of the little Ray, the little girl Ray that got choked out. Um, so this is Ray 2 that he's interacting with now. Now, to be fair, there are so many other clones and parts and pieces that it's like, it's hard to say, I guess, what's 1 versus 2, other than maybe ones that were just actually allowed out of the jar, essentially, to go live a life. But yeah, the conversation is interesting. The backdrop and seeing a better glimpse of the experiment, the original prototype of like the interface that Yui was working on, I thought was interesting. Um, and them having this conversation over this kind of game, I thought was interesting. Um, but yeah, it's like you said, it's not new information. It's like, we're halfway through the 3rd movie out of 4, and we haven't revealed this stuff yet. Guess we got to start just like, ba, 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 ba. Like, here's all your plot points. Okay, we good? Cool. Now we're going to move into all the stuff with Kaoru because we know that's what people want to see. So, Shinji's
Yeah,
getting. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it felt very much like a scene, and I think we've run into this a number of times in the series, where it's like, I like that scene. I wish you would have done that scene earlier,
Mm-hmm.
not right now, because it's like it was cool. I like that you get to kind of see like a flashback of her in like her plug suit. Like I think there were some cool visuals there,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like, yeah, it's cool, but like you've already spoiled that surprise like 40 times, so I
Yeah.
don't really appreciate it as much. But like, it looks good if that was the first time I was seeing it.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. Um, so yeah, Shinji's we kind of see him getting angry and spiteful as well. Again, knowing that it's not the same Ray that he saved, and now knowing all this other stuff, it's kind of just breaking his brain a little bit. Like he's tried to bring her things she liked. He's tried to bring her like books, and she's doing the like most robotic versions. And that's from your character development standpoint why it's so frustrating because she has factory reset to her robotic nature, where it's like I'll only get dressed even though I'm standing here naked in front of you if I'm ordered to. I'll only read the books if I'm ordered to. It's just like, oh my god, you're not a character anymore. You're literally just spare parts that just are talking right now. That's all
Yeah,
you are.
somebody shook the etch a sketch.
Yeah. It's frustrating. But the Shinji, you actually feel that frustration, especially once he knows the truth and his like head is spinning and everything. He realizes like I destroyed the world. Everybody blames me. Everybody hates me. And we know for him, for someone who only ever wants to be cared for and praised, that's got to be like the most horrific thing to consider. But he, in this whole time, his kernel of hope he's held on to is, but I did it all for Ray because I decided she meant everything to me. And I didn't even succeed. This isn't Ray. Like, this is literally just a clone. And even then, Ray wasn't even Ray. Ray was just like a facsimile of my mother, essentially. And so it's like when they show him kind of getting disoriented and he's like staggering about and it's kind of trippy, I was like, you know what? I feel that. I feel like that's where I would be at that point. In that moment, I would probably be like, oh, okay, I can't deal with this. Oh my god, like everything would just be turning red, and I just would be like, you know what? Maybe Risuko's mom didn't have the worst idea ever. Just peace out. But Shinji's a coward, as he has said that himself, essentially. He's afraid to live, too cowardly or whatever to ever take his own life or whatever.
Mm.
Not that I'm promoting that. I'm saying what this series has said.
Sure, you're not. I've seen your bumper stickers. So let's see.
We're into
Yeah,
the
the other
Kaoru
thing,
stuff, I think.
I think like one of the most, I don't know, Ray's character sucked in the series for
Mhm.
like seeming like she had emotion. And yeah, if we're like third down the chain or whatever, I get that like we're losing a little bit each time, which makes sense of why Nine is so like devoid of humanity. But
Mhm.
like her story is definitely the saddest right now because it's just like, man, she knows that something's wrong, but she like can't figure out what that missing piece is. And she
Yeah.
like always refers to herself in the third person too, like
Yep.
she's not like actually who she is.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. It feels so weird with how vacant that character started in the series. And I think maybe some of that has to do with like voice acting too, as I've probably said before. But
Mhm.
um, I'm just like, man, I wish we could have seen more of like how she looked in episode 2.22.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the
Nah.
series.
Yeah. I agree. Um, that was the most human version of her character, and that was when I enjoyed her character most, for sure. Um, yeah. So Kaoru. We're into all of that, and this is the thing I talked about, where the original dubbing of 3.0, again, Funimation's dub, um, a lot of changes were forced to be made because the original airing of it happened at some anime convention in New York. Representatives from Hideki Anno's studio were there in attendance for this, initial broadcast, and it wasn't a broadcast, but showing. And the problem with Funimation sometimes is it's anime dubbed by anime fans, and because of everybody kind of like being in the know, the wink wink jokes about Shinji and Kaoru being basically like a couple and all that, the way that a lot of the lines and the delivery and like the framing of tone and things like that and voice direction were framing things, we're leaning so heavily into that. And that's a direction choice. But the problem is, even the fans at this convention that were watching this were like hysterically laughing at everything because everything sounded like a flirty innuendo or
Mm.
something saucy, spicy, whatever. And the crowd was just roaring with laughter in lines that weren't meant to get that. And so that actually made Ano, for the first time, step in and say, like, okay, we need to change some of these things. We need to like redo how we handled certain scenes here because you're completely losing the message and the tone here. And given what they're going with Kaoru in this one in particular, I think that makes sense. It's not like it's trying to like tone it down or some sort of like gay erasure or anything like that. It's like no, that's fine if the undertones are there, but you were blaring that horn so loud that like everything else was drowned out by it. So you get them like playing piano together, and Kaoru like visiting with Shinji in his room, fixing his head, his Walkman, and all of that. And it's not every line. Like the series felt like everything he said to Shinji was borderline like Casanova romance.
Mm-hmm.
This has a few of those lines when they're looking out under the star, looks over, and Kaoru is just like already there, like propped up, like giving him like the bedroom eyes. Basically, it was like, oh, okay, we're leaning into this here. Um, there's moments like that, but it largely stays within reason. Kaoru kind of understands that like Shinji's talking about like why the stars um make him feel peaceful. He's like, oh, it always has, just knowing like how how small and insignificant I am. And so like there, 14 years is nothing. And Kaoru's kind of just like, you take comfort in like the insignificance of that. And it's kind of like him basically saying like, you feel you don't like yourself so much that you feel like if you don't matter, that gives you comfort or whatever. Because again, for what he's done and being blamed for, obviously he had a huge thing that mattered a great deal. So being told like, no, it's fine, you don't matter, is probably what he wants. But I lost my track of thought with where I was going with that exactly. But seeing seeing them talk and everything about it is interesting, and it all sets up for where they go down to they go to show Shinji exactly what happened. And I love how as they're going down this thing, Shinji's in like a full-on hazmat suit, and Kaoru's just like in his schoolboy uniform, which I'm like, there's no school. What are you wearing this for? Like you never even showed up at school. Like I don't know. Um,
Why did he
and we
feel it necessary to show him this too?
I think he just cared enough about him, and he knew Shinji was racked with not knowing
Mhm.
exactly what happened, being told that something awful happened and it was his fault, but not knowing. And so he's kind of like, okay, like I'll show you. You won't like it, but I'll show you. And so
See,
that's
I felt like it
basically
was
it.
very much like a Gendo play too, like the conversation that I think Gendo has with Futsuki. At some point, feels like, oh yeah, do you want me? You know, do you really think this is the best thing for him to be like seeing this? If I'm
Mm-hmm.
remembering correctly, and then he's like, I don't know. It just seemed like, oh yeah, yeah, that's part of my plan. Like I expected
Yeah,
this was going to happen.
yeah, no, maybe. Um, so yeah, Shinji sees the ruins of Tokyo 3 and understands a lot of what was lost. It's still not seeing everything. That comes later on, but basically Shinji is just crippled with this. He's in total despair, knowing everything that happened, what his role and everything was, and again, what he basically sacrificed everything for. He didn't even get. So it really is a bad rap in that situation. It feels kind of like not just buyer's remorse, but like he got gypped here. It's like, the least you could have done is give him Ray. I would have taken. It would have been more interesting if we had had a form of Ray too, and the new Ray or whatever. Because Nerve would
Mm-hmm.
obviously Gendo have to still have a Ray. Then you could have had an interesting thing there, but maybe they didn't want to do the two versions of one character bit. Um,
And don't they make a comment about Ray seeing like the I can't remember what your name for it is, like
Quantum Ray.
spirit quantum ray? Yeah.
Yeah, they do show Ray in the tube seeing Quantum Ray. And Quantum Ray, I didn't even remember for sure if she showed up in the rebuild. I know she's the glimpse of 1.0 still, and she's here again, so I guess she's got a couple still. But it's very with that. They just don't have the time to really explore it. Not that the series gave you a lot to work with, but it gave you at least
Mm-hmm.
glimpses enough you could do something with it. Um, I thought it was
And
interesting. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say he calls Kaoru Nagase.
That's his proper name, just like he calls Ray
Oh,
Ayanami,
okay, okay,
his
got it, got
surname. Yep. Um, three. So here's Kaoru's line when they're looking at the ruins. You see that like cross-laced moon in the ruins of Tokyo 3. He says the Lilin sacrificed the lives of the past in order to forge a new future imbued with the fruit of knowledge. And he's referring to this as the Human Instrumentality Project. The gates of Guff opened. Shinji was the key to it all, fused within Unit 1. Um, and yeah, for all the blame and everything, it's like, yeah, like, how could he have known that? Why does he have to bear the consequences of his past mistakes in this? But Kaoru refers to the DSS choker around his neck basically as the sin he has to carry, but he tells him that there's no sin that cannot be atoned for. Um, I think it's after this scene where we actually get that conversation with Fuyutsuki and Shinji here. Let's see.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, I liked this line from Fuyusuke though. When he was talking to Shinji, he says, the course of the world cannot be reversed, nor can people's hearts. Breaking the world is of a trivial matter. Putting it back together is another matter entirely. I wanted to share some truths with you and tell you about your father. Um, and then when Shinji leaves, he's basically like, "Oh, what a wretched role to have to play. Is this really what you wanted, Yui?" Um, but I liked that whole line, like, "Oh yeah, breaking the world, that's easy. Putting it back together, that's a little bit more complicated." Um, I just thought that was a really nice quote to, again, like you were talking about the imagery of that scene and these revelations that to us are now second hat, but old hat, but for people watching it for the first time would probably be carrying a lot more weight.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back to what we see, the world in like red, and then there's like a moon above it with a grid and
Yeah.
looks like blood-stained moon. So as I was watching that, even like kind of going back, I'm like, what am I looking at here? So can you give
Mm.
me your understanding or impression of what that is, and then we can talk about it a little bit?
My thinking is that it is the egg of Lilith, essentially, um, raised up. Like they had a glimpse of it in End of Evangelion, I think, but this is like taken to a different stylistic extreme. I think it's something along those lines, but the specific thing does not come to me right now.
Now, this was like a very Shin Godzilla's tail moment for me
Yeah.
because we're looking at little Eva angels.
Yep.
And this is where I'm so confused. I'm like, what happened? When did this happen? So it
Yeah.
was like
It happened in.
instrumentality happening while Shinji was getting Rei, and then everybody started to change into angels, and then that stopped. I'm like, I'm so confused of what I'm seeing.
My understanding is it happened, even though at the post-credits scene of 2.22, Kaoru throws the one of the spears of Longinus or whatever, and it immobilizes Unit 1. The gates are still open. So, like, it's weird because the animation makes it look like it stopped. But I think there was a failsafe, which we see in this movie come into play again, that kind of kept the process going. And so I think even though Shinji is incapacitated, I think the process continues, and you see all this other stuff continue to fall out, where half the population is wiped out, or maybe more at this point. And you had the rising moon and all of this. Human instrumentality was starting, but the reveal we end up getting of who stopped human instrumentality was Kaji. Um, and he did it in one of the Mark Avas or whatever, one of the Ava Mark whatever. I don't know if it was 9 or whatever, but apparently Lilith did rise, and apparently Kaji somehow decapitated her ass and then immobilized her with not one but 2 of the spears. Somehow, in the process of all of this, it cost him his life. I don't know how. It's never explained. It's just he died sacrificing himself to stop instrumentality, is all we're given.
So was Kaji piloting Ava's when this was happening?
It's never shown. I mean, it's never been shown him doing that. It's never been suggested that an adult could do it. Remember? Like, that was a whole thing of like, had to be children, had to be 14-year-olds, like the sync rate, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how he did this. It's never explained. And that's one of those reasons why I'm like, I've never really accepted this answer. I'm like, you could have told me any way he sacrificed himself during instrumentality, and I would have accepted it, except for him piloting an Ava or whatever and fighting Lilith and somehow winning. Like, how do you beat a god if you're in a prototype mock whatever Ava? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a weird
Hmm.
one. Um, I do like when we're seeing like the rise of Unit 13. It looks a lot like Unit 1, like just a little bigger. And it's a dual entry plug system. And so Karu is like, yep, it's time. And he tries to talk to Shinji about it, and Shinji's just not having any of it. He's thrown his Walkman against the wall and smashed it. And Karu's just trying to tell him, change brought about by an Eva can be changed again by an Eva. Shinji's like, nah, that's not true. He says he can't trust anybody. Kaoru's like, oh, well, you can trust me. No, I can't. He basically just not doing any of that. And Kaoru says, he approaches Shinji and takes off the DS choker very easily, I might add, and then puts it on himself, which he refers to as the Lilin curse. He says, they originally made this out of fear of what I might do. I plan to do this sooner or later. Yeah, so they're going to go and they're going to descend down into Nerve HQ, basically the heart of where the near third impact was. And they're going to retrieve the spears, the 2 spears from Lilith, because the explanation that Kaoru gives is that with these spears, they're different spears, they're not both Longinus, they will be able to basically rewrite history. That, again, redo, right? Like undo the destruction and damage of the world that was inflicted by this whole thing. That's the thinking. And I like how as they pilot Unit 13, so now Shinji has officially piloted an Eva, which everybody and their mother told him just made him swear he wouldn't do. Though to be fair, he never agreed to any of it, but everybody was telling him not to pilot an Eva. And the only reason it doesn't trigger at this point is because he's out of range of the detonator. That was a whole thing when he was escaping early on. Misato, I don't know if she just didn't have the stomach to actually detonate him, or if she was just still wrestling with it. But he got away when he escaped the ship because she just hesitated so long he was eventually out of range.
Mm-hmm.
But they can see when Unit 13 activates, and so they're immediately scrambling the ships as Shinji and Kaoru in Unit 13 are descending down through this layer. It's like basically that coreized wall of, I guess, Lilith's egg or whatever. And Kaoru says something about like, oh, it has to do with like their vibes and they have to be in sync. And I guess this was like how they justify or explain the piano lessons earlier on. Like they had to be in like perfect rhythm together or something, like biometric rhythm, sort of like Shinji and Asuka had to do in that episode where they had to fight in tandem. So they descend through it. Shinji sees all of these, this just sea of basically the souls that weren't able to make the human instrumentality thing, like for whatever reason, or maybe they're the ones that were still in the process when it happened. But it's strange that they say that they're souls, and yet how many of them look like they're like disfigured Evas, kind of. And we know Evas have souls. We know that they're artificial humans. But I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing, visually speaking. Yeah, Shinji's amazed by Kaoru's plan just because he's like, oh, this was the one Kaoru line that made me roll my eyes. When Shinji's like hearing this plan of Kaoru's, he's like, oh, you're amazing, you know everything. And Kaoru's like, that's because all I think about is you. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, that doesn't even make sense, Kaoru. What the hell? Casanova is just getting a little lazy with these one-liners, but it still seems to work. Shinji's smitten. Yeah, and then that's when they give themselves or give each other permission to use their first names with each other instead of Nagasaki or Ikari or whatever. Although I don't recall Kaoru ever calling Shinji Ikari. Gendo, yes, but whatever.
So this is when we start going down into...
Yeah, and Rei is there with them in Mark 9, Rei 2. And Shinji's kind of like pissy and annoyed she's even there. Like, what's she doing here? We don't need her. And I'm like, Shinji, I know that you don't like that she's not your Rei, but calm down.
she's not even a real person.
Yeah.
She's just kind of on the other end, like, what?
Yeah, she's like,
Enough?
yeah, I'm not real. Yeah, it's like there are so many times where she just has like this wounded puppy reaction to things, or she's not even Ayanami, and she's like, I'm not Rei Ayanami. Like, what do you mean? Um,
Why do you think Pacific Rim, I'm getting back to Pacific Rim, we've talked about this a lot, chose to steal the dual entry plug
mhm.
suits rather than the solo suits?
uh, I don't know. I think it's more interesting because then you can build the human story out of two pilots having to find that
Commingle.
harmony and everything. Like that was a big part of the training in the first movie, how they bridged the gap a little bit. So probably that, probably exploring that and kind of seeing the resistance and how they'd have to kind of come together, work together, all that. But it's interesting. The concept is there and it's interesting. So in this 3.33, this would have come out after Pacific Rim. Actually, this would have been 2014 or no, wait. Yeah, no, 2014 I think is when 3.33 came out.
This came out after Pacific Rim?
Pretty sure. I recall Pacific Rim being like early 2010s, and this was like mid 2010s.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yep. So the dual thing might have been Anno borrowing inspiration that way.
Hmm.
But um,
He's like,
Shinji
damn, that's
asks.
good. I should have done that.
Shinji asks why they couldn't just use Rei as the second soul if they needed two souls for this unit. Like basically, why did you have to wait for me to come back? And Kaoru says that she is a facsimile, essentially, of a soul. She is not a soul. Which is like, again, damn, Rei's got to be over there just like, the hell, I'm just catching strays left and right here. Um, yeah, so they descend down in there. They see the spears, and Kaoru is immediately like, hold up. This doesn't seem right here. Something's wrong. But he's just looking very pensively at it. He's just like, these spears should look different, but they look just like one another. That's weird. And Shinji's like, what? Whatever, man. You said this will fix the world. And the first time I watched this, I hated it because it reminded me of like Endgame or Infinity War, Star-Lord just being the dumbass idiot where he's like, oh, Thanos is like asleep. Just pull off the gauntlet and we win. And he's like, no, bah, bah, I gotta punch him in the face because I'm so angry. That's how I felt watching this the first time with Shinji. Um, I get it a little more in hindsight now. Again, with the weight of everything he's carrying, with the realization that he destroyed the world and he didn't even get the one thing he wanted in return. Now he's had someone dangle a carrot in front of him and say, "We go do this, we fix everything." And Shinji's probably even thinking like, not only do I undo my sin essentially, but I might even be able to finally get that praise and adoration that I so desperately want, that
Mm.
I've craved. Because yeah, I'm fixing my mistake, but they have to like me if I fix everything. I at least undid it, and I can maybe even do it better. So now he gets there, and Kaoru's like, wait, this doesn't seem right. He's like, what? No, you said it would fix it. No, I have to go get it. And he's just like, I don't even care. I'm getting it. Like, you said this would fix it. He's like, if I don't listen, nobody can tell me it's the wrong thing. Like, we're still working, like, the universe is working on this understanding of what you originally said is true. And so he's going
I
for
feel
it.
like that was so stupid, too. I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, he's the one that told you about this, and
Mm-hmm.
he's leery, and you're still like, no, 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 it's good. No, that doesn't make any logical sense. Like,
Yeah.
why would you do this?
Yeah. He's just not thinking anymore. It's not reasoning mind. So units 2 and 5 appear, and we get a cool fight with Unit 13 um, going to fight with Unit 2. And Kaoru's not, he's still literally just pensively. He's not even paying attention to the fight. He's still just there, just like, why are these similar now? That's weird. And so Shinji is fighting with Asuka. Asuka is like in disbelief that it's Shinji in that, she basically says something to the extent of like, oh, he's not an idiot, he's a brat or something like that, which I guess is her version of even worse. Like, Just a child, can't be reasonable or mature about it. And she had a throwaway line too earlier in the movie. Again, both of them having the history they have with Kaji, where when she's talking to Misato after telling Shinji off early on, Shinji's like, "Well, I did all of this to save Rei," and she said something to the extent of like, "Awful lot of fuss to make over one person, especially these days. Isn't that right, Misato?" And it's like knowing what Kaji, both of their relationships were to Kaji. I'm like, that's kind of cool. That's like that's that shared pain that they would both have. Like we understand this, but it doesn't make it easier. Um, so yeah, we get this fight, and you have a moment of convenience again where Asuka's battery runs out on her Eva. She has to wait for Mari to toss her another one, which gives Shinji the chance to basically deck her in the schnoz and run back to the body of Lilith and retrieve the two spears. You had a fight going on as well with Mari and Rei, and
Mari is like such a background character. Like,
yeah,
not only just like because she's new, but like literally is as far away from everyone as possible. Just like, I'll provide cover fire from 20 miles away. And it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
why do we need you here? Just stay out of this movie, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I liked the point where as things are starting to go south, Mari says something to Rei like, "Oh, you're gonna want to clear out," and she's like, "I will if ordered to," and Mari's just like, and again, I'm like, when did Mari ever meet Rei 1? But she's like, your original was much more interesting, or was, um, whatever. Just I liked her better, basically, easier to get along
Mm.
with. And Rei is again just like the original, like it's just it's a not a good combination of characters for this interaction. I'm like, I don't care. That's why I almost glossed over it completely.
The
Um,
files are in the computer.
exactly. But with Shinji retrieving the two spears, everything starts going south. Karu's looking sick to his stomach. He's trying to tell Shinji to stop, but he's not stopping him. I don't know why he's not physically doing something to stop him. He has controls. Only once Shinji retrieves the two spears, then I guess Gendo, his failsafe, disattaches or whatever Kaoru's part of the controls, which is like, again, Kaoru, you could have jumped in at any moment before now. You're only now just like, I can't do anything. Like, where have you been? You could have stopped this a while ago. You could have literally like put your foot down when they were staring at the two spears and been like, no, 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 we're not moving forward. Like, we're not in agreement. We're not moving forward until we figure this out.
I'd like to see like in the writers' room for this, where they're like, all right, so we're gonna put them both in the same Ava, and they're
Yeah,
gonna have to pilot it together, and they're gonna need their own particular set of arms to grab these spears, and we're gonna need two souls to do it. And then they're gonna be like, but there's gonna be this part, and Kaoru is just gonna have to not do anything, and we're
yeah,
gonna have to figure out a way to explain that. And somebody's like, don't you think we just should put them back in one Ava so then Shinji could just do everything on his own and we wouldn't
yeah.
have to have this weird thing where he's just doing this for like 10 minutes and there's
Mm-hmm.
no explanation? They're like, we already talked about the double thing. It's happening. Pacific Rim's awesome. Let's do it.
Yeah, pretty much. Um, yeah, so Mari tries to do some cover fire to take down Unit 13, but she's surprised when she sees it doesn't have an AT field, which is odd. And that's apparently, again, they make her a Mary Sue in a lot of ways because she apparently, even though it doesn't tell us what that means, she immediately realizes what that means. Um, and then we get two more arms springing free from Unit 13, and yeah, the spears are pulled out,
Oh, it's got a cool
and
thing we didn't talk about too. It's got these like little balls,
Unit
big old balls.
what are the balls we're referring to here?
It's got like these balls that protect it. Like when
Oh, yeah,
Oscar
yeah, yeah.
first engages, it creates like the ball thing has like an AT field
Yeah.
essentially, and then is kind of like doing most of the work for them, which I thought was
Yeah.
like kind of an interesting thing to not explain at all, but randomly
Yep.
throw in.
Yep. No, you're right. Um, so with the spears retrieved, the 12th angel revives and it prepares to restart the third impact. Rey actually joins in helping attack the angel. And she shows a moment of agency there where she's like, "These are my orders." And I'm like, I don't know who gave you those orders, but hey, you're doing something cool. But it doesn't do anything, obviously. Shinji's now all of a sudden stunned by the sight of this angel. It's enveloping Unit 13 within its core. And Mari is just immediately just like, well, this is a lost cause, essentially, but she's interested to see what happens when the final angel is beaten. Again, she like already knows everything that's going to happen, and it irritates the piss out of me. So as Rey is staring at the core, a distorted form of her own face reflects back, and she questions her existence. Shinji, trapped inside, is panicking, asking Kaoru for help. Kaoru then says that he, the first angel, is falling to become the 13th angel. The beginning and the end are one and the same. Gendo has won, essentially. Gendo then meets with Seele and declares this is farewell. He and Fuyusuki then appear to basically euthanize each of them. Like, what the fuck? I remember thinking, watching this, like, wow, we went real fast back to minimizing the shit out of Seele and making them not seem that important.
Yeah, can we talk about that scene? Because I was thoroughly confused.
Yeah,
I was like,
that's
okay,
fair.
well, in the original, we see people, and then they become these like headstone type things.
Yeah, this is like unplugging computers or something, as if their consciousness is all that's there. And maybe that's something that, again, happened off camera, because they did do that in the end of Evangelion during human instrumentality, melt down to that form. So maybe it's just like they're, ever since the aborted unit or near third impact, maybe they're just, that's what form they have now, but they're still plotting. I have no idea. There's no explanation. I don't know
There
what
should have been more to that because I've always been wondering. I'm like, what are these things? Why did we switch to these things?
Yeah.
And then now it's like, click, you're dead. But
Yeah.
there's no explanation of like, no, there was consciousness living in this tablet. It's
Yeah.
just so strange to like act like we know what's going on there.
Yeah, and Gendo also promises to carry out their human instrumentality project in addition to his own wish, which is, it's weird to me how fine they are with this. They're like, this is fine. We got what we wanted. Like, I liked it better when you guys were like, nope, only one of us can win and we're going to plot against each other. Because, like, there was some of that because Kaoru was their person, their ploy. And so, like, there was backbiting, but now they're just, like, weirdly, like, going along with it. But if all Gendo had to do is just unplug their asses, why is he only now winning? It doesn't make sense to me. He could have walked in the room and unplugged the server and it's done.
Yeah, I thought we were going to see a scene where he like, unplugs it, and then somewhere else in the world we see somebody like executing them at the same time or something. So it's like kind of like a ritual
Yeah.
type thing, but no, we didn't get that.
No. We then get the classical music as Unit 13 awakens and the fourth impact begins. Unit 13 apparently is a, quote, straggler atom, which I told you, the rebuilds apparently have like 5 atoms. Why? I don't know. How? I don't know. Seeds of life? Multiverse? I don't know. I'm guessing other seeds of life, and if it's a male or female, they just were lazy and were like, you're an atom, and you're an atom, and you're an atom. I don't know. Did other seeds of life keep showing up on Earth because of the catastrophe or the F up, basically, where you had Lilith and Adam? I don't know. But we have multiple atoms, and apparently Unit 13 was built from a straggler atom. Seeing the citywide destruction of everything come undone again, Shinji collapses into despair. He's made it all worse. Only now does he listen to Kaoru as he explains that this is the opening rites of the fourth impact. The DS choker activates. Shinji tries to remove it, but he can't due to Kaoru's AT field. So Kaoru is basically holding him at bay. Vunder and Misato are then shown ramming into Unit 13 to try and stop the impact, not knowing that Kaoru is wearing the choker now and not Shinji. And I guess Misato, in her last-ditch effort, does activate it, thinking essentially that she's going to be killing Shinji. You don't see her wrestling with that, but that's the impression I get. Or maybe it's seeing Shinji's mental state even though it's on Kaoru. I don't know. That part's weird to me.
Did we see her activating it at some point in time?
No. So
I don't
that's why I
remember
went back.
seeing the device. That's why I was like, I remember her doing that initially when it's like out of range, but
Yeah.
I thought there was like maybe even something Kaoru did that like triggered it to automatically, go off. But maybe that's not the case.
If
Maybe she
it's
just triggered it and that's all there is to it.
or if it's still actually tied to just Shinji, he's freaking the F out as all of this is happening. So maybe that's all it
Hmm.
is. Even though Kaoru's the one wearing it, Shinji's the one reacting. And if it is tied to his biometric whatever, I don't know. Um, but yes,
I
Mark
like
9
that.
is then taken over by what looks like a Sele control panel. That's a weird blink and you miss it sort of thing. And Mark 9 begins corrupting the Vunder to wrest control away from Unit 1. We even mentioned that earlier. Unit 1's been missing since like this entire movie. It's the core of the Vunder. It's the thing powering the ship, which is like a really weird decision, I guess. Um, then we see Asuka kind of utilize the same beast mode transformation that Mari used in the last movie to fight Mark 9, which should be cool because it's like, oh shit, Asuka versus Rey, that's awesome. Except no, it's not. It's Rey too, who has no personality or history with her. Except it's even worse than that because Mark 9 has, yes, Rey is in the thing, but she's not even piloting it. She's literally just held hostage inside the thing. So it's like, on the surface, you're like, oh, this should be cool, but it's really not. It's really just the standard thing.
The whole like
Um,
beast mode thing too is I feel like so much less impactful than when it like went berserk in the past,
yeah.
which even that they've ruined because it's like, okay, cool, it's gone berserk. Oh my gosh, it's like eating things, it's crazy. And then they just are like, never talk about it again. We
Mm-hmm.
did something cool. We don't really know how to run with that. So we're just gonna go back to it being the way it was before. It's
Yeah.
like, why did you even do all of that if you're not going to explore it?
Yep. I agree. Um, Asuka's eyes then, including the patched one, glow as she tears apart Unit 9. Rey questions what Rey Ayanami would do at a time like this, and Asuka tells her it doesn't matter what she would do. She just tells her to do what basically doesn't matter what she would do. I don't know what she would do. The question is, what do you want to do, basically? And you see Rey again. I guess this is taking some form of agency. No one ordered her to, but she ejects and flees to safety. Despite ripping open Mark 9, Asuka can't destroy it because its entire body is apparently a core. Again, just bullshit that just happens with no explanation. Um, Out of time and with no further measures available, her only choice is to destroy the angel by ejecting and activating her Ava's self-destruct sequence. So Unit 2 is gone, but it has stopped the corruption of the Vunder. Inside Unit 13, Shinji cries over his mistake, but Kaoru takes the blame. Takes the blame for him because it was he who was the trigger and he who was fooled. He tells Shinji goodbye and that he's sorry he couldn't make him happy. He'll close the doors of Guff to stop the fourth impact, but his time is over. He says Shinji needs to find peace and rest and a place to rest to call his own. The ties that bond you will show you the way. And then he tells him not to look so sad because they'll meet again before his choker goes off in a very savage head exploding slash beheading effect. And that's just like in End of Evangelion when you can slow down the animation of Misato's death and it's like frame by frame, like, oh, you are destroying that body. It's not like you're just blurring it with a pop or something, you know. You can slow down
Shinji's like, I
Kaoru's
wish that
thing.
was me destroying this body.
Yeah, you can slow down Kaoru's death, and it's like, whoo, you animated all of that, huh? Um, yeah. So Unit 13 is uh, incapacitated and begins to drift towards Earth as the gates of Guff close. And Mari snatches Unit 13 and reclaims Shinji before Unit 13 can resume the impact. Because, and again, a failsafe, the dual soul thing, as long as Shinji was still in there, it could restart even after Kaoru's death. So that's apparently a thing. And again, Mari just annoyingly knows all of this immediately and takes action. Um, she tells Shinji to grow up and to save the princess while there's still time, and to learn a thing or two about life while he's at it. He ejects, Unit 13 deactivates, and the impact is averted. Unit 13 is still awakened, however, and their boy, as Gendo says, he's referring to Kaoru, is neutralized, which is what he ultimately wanted. So even in all of this, Gendo's still like, nah, we still got closer. We're still in line for what we want to do. Units 2, Mark 9, and Unit 1 are all out of commission, leaving Asuka, Rei, and Shinji alone, buried deep behind the contaminated coreized region. Mari returns in Unit 5 to the Vunder. Shinji's in a fetal position in his entry plug. Asuka appears and explains why she was so furious with him. Basically, it boils down to he didn't come to help her. He only thinks of himself. He thinks shutting down and keeping to himself is the only answer. And she starts to leave, but then comes back and retrieves him anyway. She's basically going to make him go with her back to the Vunder, like the meetup point. Then Rei appears, and Asuka now, showing she knows more and hasn't been telling us, refers to Rei as one of the originals from the Ayanami batch, which is an interesting sort of line in a grander scheme. Shinji drops his Walkman, Rei stares down at it, and the three of them then are seen marching on so that they can meet up at a rendezvous point and be safely picked up. That is how we end.
I really thought there was
I
going to be a fist fight there.
it,
It didn't happen.
it felt like she should have punched him once, but he would have just crumpled and done nothing. I like where the movie ends. I do. I think where they take it at the end, this is like a perfect leading into the last chapter moment, I think, for the three of them. Even though it's not the Rei we want, I think it's a good ending. Even though I'm underwhelmed by the climax itself, the final note, I'm like, okay, that intrigues me about like how are they going to get back? What's this last fight going to look like as we set up for the next one, Thrice Upon a Time? Like it raises those interesting questions. Not to go on any longer than we have about this already, because I think we both already kind of expressed what we think of the movie. What were your thoughts of the big reveal of who Kaoru is, effectively?
Um, do I know more than I knew before?
Kaoru is an allegory for Jesus. He took
And that,
original sin from Shinji and
I
died
mean,
for
I
it.
feel like that was always like kind of what I was getting out of that character.
Yeah, they just lean harder into it in this
Yeah,
one.
they definitely lean harder in this one
His
for
love, his
sure.
grace, as he said in certain ones. Yeah, Kaoru is the embodiment of Jesus, essentially, and so he has this unconditional love and everything of Shinji, and yeah, he even refers to the DS Choker for the first time to Shinji as, I don't know if he says original sin, but he says Sen, and then he takes Sen from him, dawns it himself, dies for Shinji's sins, like all the stuff, like very much hammered home. Um, yeah, there was another person I watched these movies with when they were gearing up for Thrice Upon a Time, like I was. They watched the entire series and all that, and when I pointed that out to them, it like blew their mind. I was like, I didn't think it was that shocking of a thing, but I guess if you weren't really paying attention to it. So I was curious, like, since you hadn't made that kind of comment before, I was wondering, like, oh, I wonder if you are in a similar boat or if you had picked up on that.
I feel like I got that a lot with the original. Like that's where I thought they were taking that character. I mean, obviously in a little bit of a different, slightly homophobic direction,
Yeah,
um, but
more homoerotic.
homoerotic. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like that was always kind of like what I felt
Yeah.
about the character, and then
Okay.
when we get it here, yeah, it's definitely like laying it on pretty thick to where I think you're not misunderstanding. And I kind of think that's, part of the reason he didn't struggle with like the choker and stuff too.
Yeah.
It's like, he's got some ability that I don't think that was just like, oh, it's really easy to get this choker off. Like that wouldn't be a self-destruct device if that's the case.
Yeah.
And I even kind of got that feeling in the first, gosh, now what am I thinking? The series,
Mm-hmm.
trying to remember back from all the different places this sits. Um, when he's like controlling the Ava, even though that's kind of explained through like the souls thing, he
Yeah.
just feels to have like a very like supernatural power to the level that um like Ray doesn't have.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's always kind of what was being hinted at.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. I've said it before, but I still reiterate, of the rebuilds, this is my least favorite. It's the one that it tries to be the most ambitious in a lot of ways. It has interesting ideas, some interesting scenes, but there's just a lot of stuff that just does not feel explored or developed, stuff that's rushed, stuff that just kind of falls flat for me. And so largely I just kind of feel like it's I don't know if I think before I would have said I rated 1.0 is my worst before this rewatch. This rewatch, I had a greater appreciation for 1.0 actually. So now I feel like I probably lean towards that. I probably say for my personal thing, it's 2.0, Rice 1, 3.
Man,
And you
I
haven't seen one of them,
loved
so.
1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were really good. And in my head, I am always like, man, I would love to just go through and just splice all this together. I think there's so many, like, one gave me everything I wanted from
The
not
series.
being a boring perspective and really like amping up the action.
Mm-hmm.
2 gave me like the story of like Ray and Shinji, which I always wanted, and like the emotional background that actually like was not robotic.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed that part of it. This one, there's so much time shifted. There's so many like ideas that I feel like were just half baked, and like the most interesting things about the movie were things that like they didn't really give us information on. And I
Yeah.
don't feel like that's, oh, it's interesting because it's a mystery. It's like, no, it's interesting because you actually had an interesting thought and then you didn't do anything with it,
Yep.
which I feel like is kind of the crux of the series too. It's like there's so many things that I was really excited about. And I feel like every time we got to the point where it's like, ooh, let's talk about this or let's explore this, it's like, nope, move on to something else. That's not really what we're here for.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, why do you give us anything if you're not going to go with the fun things? Like, what's the point? Why include it? Why do I need to see all the like, the third impact stuff? It's like, I want to see what happened. I want to know
Right.
how that happened. I want to see like where this all came together and why it changed and like where should, it's like it feels to me like the last 2 episodes of the series where we're just left out of all the fun stuff that's happening,
Mm-hmm.
and all you want to be doing is seeing stuff go crazy.
Yeah. No, I agree. Um, so now, with that in mind, we are down to the last chapter of Evangelion, Thrice Upon a Time. And if you thought the titles were confusing before, this is not Neon Genesis Evangelion 4.0. This is not 4.44. This is 3.0 plus 1.0, Thrice Upon a Time. Why? I don't know. So now, the next thing we got to figure out. We mentioned this once before, but we did just do one of these recently, so I don't know. We got to figure out if we're gonna do like our watch party thing like we did with End of Evangelion. Um, we ended up not even doing anything for the Godzilla Final Wars. I think that was it had stupid fun moments, but not enough that we felt like we could really draw an interesting episode out of that. So we kind of just
Yeah.
left that one be. Um, but
Now,
yeah,
what I
so
think we should do is we should watch Thrice Upon a Time, followed by the 90s Godzilla movie,
oh
because
god,
I could talk about that movie for days.
yeah, I wouldn't mind taking a crack at Zilla. We could definitely make that an episode sometime. But yeah, so we'll figure that out. But we're down to the end of Ava, and then we got to find a new mine that we want to go to. We got to look at some different films and stuff. We've pitched around a few ideas of stuff we wanted to review, but now we got to start actually like figuring out and making
I
that
don't even
list because
remember what we talked about last. I feel like that conversation was a
it's been
while
a
ago.
minute. Yeah,
Yeah.
but we'll figure it out. We'll get a list of things going. But we got one more chapter to do. We'll do it. This is I'm trying to remember how long this movie is. I want to say it's like 2.5 hours. It's a full one. I will say this: if you love the world building of 1 and 2, you will absolutely get that here. I parts of Thrice I love. Some of my favorite stuff in the series. Um, but it's not to say it doesn't have its problems. It does.
Mhm.
Um, but some interesting stuff there. So we'll get into it, and as always, we'll review it. But those are our takes. You may find them cheap, but to you, we say, I don't know, you try and make sense of this shit. That's where I'm at with this. As much as I've seen this series, I'm still just like half the time you're like, what does this mean? I don't know, man. It's a moon. It's a moon and it's got like a grid on it. It means something. I don't know. I probably read it once, but I forgot it. But we'll be back soon. Till next time, guys. I've been Derek.
And I've been Matt.
Peace.